Alrighty, folks, I have done the classic error of muting my mic yet again. However, I am back with you. I'm JoeDamillio. I'm here to commentate this match. I did a long intro, and we're just going to redo that real quick. Our runners are some very exciting people. On the left, we have JoeDamillio, well-known in the community, very fast runner of this game in particular. He actually has 8th place on our NMG leaderboard with 1 hour, 24 minutes, and I had it just a minute ago, but about 30-something seconds. Nathacsa is a runner who has been with the community for a few years now. A little more of a casual speed runner, mostly focuses on just having a fun time with it. Currently holding a PB on our leaderboard of 157. So for the runners in our race today, Joe's going to be mostly looking to, try to get the best possible average time for his seeding for the elimination bracket. And then Nathacsa, having already, lost enough matches to be excluded from the elimination bracket, is looking to get a new PB today. Well, I didn't get a chance to explain those blue guards while I wasn't muted, but we noticed earlier that JoeDamillio did a spin slash that allowed him to get the key closer to the door. Small things like that, where we're kind of exploiting the way our enemies are going to be positioned when we hit them, or before we hit them, and even after, will be little time saves that'll get us an advantage here. JoeDamillio is walking into the mantle room about 10 to 15 seconds before Nathacsa, just because of those differences. Well, we do have a couple more instances of RNG to work around. We're about to see it with Joe's screen as soon as he gets through the next water room. We're going to see a key rat that will spawn in a certain position. And Nathacsa actually had really rough snake RNG, but this key rat can move in a couple of different directions. The one, if he goes left or north, is worst, but Joe gets the best possible key rat. He's at half a heart of health. I mean, there's a time save that he can get in the sanctuary, but this is a kind of risky position. He has to make sure he doesn't get hit by any of these rats coming out of the escape. Well, Joe with a 5:54 escape, a very respectable escape. That's fantastic time. Anything under 6 minutes is pretty good for most runners, some of it having to do with RNG, of course. So even in spite of the RNG, he did experience Joe having a very good, time to get out of there sub 6. Well, Nathacsa getting out about half a minute later, actually about 40 seconds later. So JoeDamillio has a pretty hefty lead here. We have a little more RNG here on JoeDamillio's screen. We have some Octoroks here who can get in our way a little bit. Only had to nudge slightly left to get out of the way of that. Nicely done. Good reaction. We were just talking about pumping in chat, so this is a good example of where it really impacts the run as far as time save goes. Anytime we're going to go north or west, it's beneficial to do it, particularly in a shallow angle. But with these stairs really slow down Link's movement animation, so we really benefit a lot from resetting to the faster left and upwards movements compared to right and down. Well, I will notice that all of our runners here have picked up the Sanctuary Heart. Shout out to the Sanctuary Heart, probably keeping us alive several times throughout this run. JoeDamillio is heading towards a very interesting room. This is the Stalfos room. Normally we would have 4 Stalfos spawn in this room. By taking advantage of the spawn trigger, which depends on Link's actual position in the screen, we can make one of the Stalfos spawn underneath the pot, so not at all, and another one outside of the room. By throwing 2 pots in very specific places, we can kill all 4 of them in a matter of just moments. Thalfon in chat asking about stair pumping. Yes, that is exactly how it works. So you can do it when you're moving upwards, you would mash left and right when you're in the stairs. Or if it was leftwards, you would just tap up or down, depending on which direction you want to go. Well, Nathacsa has the Stalfos room down pat, getting a very nice movement through there. JoeDamillio is going to show us a really nice damage boost here in the big key room. Normally we have to kill all the enemies in the room to get the anti-fairies to leave the pot there, so we can get a switch underneath it. But by exploiting invincibility frames, we can actually be standing on that switch when we no longer have those iframes, and activate it without having to kill everything. So he did it very well there. Also of note, both of our runners did pick up their safety arrows, so Joe and Nathacsa are not going to have to worry nearly as much to pick up arrows throughout the rest of this dungeon. Normally you would have to worry about drops. Now we may also see them pick up a couple of the pots that are directly in the path. Probably the next room for Joe here would be a very common place to get one. Yep, opting for 2, so we have a couple of extra. Now, if we do get 1 or 2 nice arrow drops, that's going to be helpful, because the more we have leaving this dungeon, the better. Ooh, nicely done. So he maxes out his arrow count before having to kill these Igors. If he gets another one, he'll be pretty much full. Not a problem if he doesn't, though. 26 arrows, more than enough. And here we have the fast heal strat. We're going to pump 5 arrows into the top right 2 Armos, and then just mash it on the way down on the left. Perfectly executed. Meanwhile, Nathacsa on the right getting a bomb 20 drop. Plenty of rupees. Possibly going to save him from having to pick up extras. I think it's likely, though, that we probably take the Sahaza the rupees. So shouldn't be too relevant, but never hurts to get a good drop. Well, we're about to find out exactly what kind of rupee route JoeDamillio here is going to run. To my knowledge, I believe he does do the rupees for the rupee pull, but it would also be valid to go right behind Sahaswiller here to pick up 100 rupees and possibly some bombs as well. He talked to Sahaswiller from below him, though, so I think he's probably just going to go for the tree rupees. And we'll get a great example of our first spin speed. If you charge up a spin slash and hit the dash button 1 frame after you release it, the game gets confused about what speed Link should be moving. It stores that dash speed, and then once you change your movement speed by touching a non-automatic ladder, so basically like a manual staircase, which would normally slow Link, you'll apply the dash speed to your walking animation. Very useful, but it doesn't save a ton of time. There's only a couple instances where we get more than a couple seconds out of it. Death Mountain's a good one. We noticed that JoeDamillio didn't go for the unholy spin speed, but he could get one on his way back towards the heading on his way towards the desert. And looks like he got it with absolutely no problems. Very nice of him. We also have a moment of truth here for Nathacsa. Going to find out what kind of rupee route we're going to take here. And it looks like we're going to opt for the Sahaswiller rupees. The other nice thing about this is we do have a couple of safety bombs that we're going to be able to rely upon. In Tower of Hera, which will be the dungeon after this, we could also use it to get a free coffee break. And who doesn't love free coffee? You'll notice that sometimes spin speed doesn't activate perfectly well in the first try. It's a pretty precise trick to do. Generally speaking, you only want to try it or attempt it a couple of times. If it takes more than 1 or 2 tries, you're usually going to lose time from doing it. Well, it's time for Desert Palace, also known as the Palace of Dashes. We're going to walk back and forth quite a lot. Interesting thing about that torch that has the key on it, you don't have to bonk directly into the torch. You can actually just nudge it on your way past and then hit the wall, and it still counts. You'll notice JoeDamillio had a little bit of bad luck with the cannonball RNG in this room. He had to stop his dash in the middle of the room to make sure he didn't get hit by him. One thing he could have done on the way back was to walk to the sand and then start his dash, but he might have thought he was going to be able to beat it. We'll pick up some arrows here, though. Oh, interestingly enough, we also have Nathacsa getting the safeties early on, so this is a route that you don't see from a lot of runners, though it is a very safe way to get through the Desert Palace. So I believe we picked up a bug net and bottle while we were in the village. This is going to give him a little bit of extra safety. He's going to grab the ferries just west of Link's house, too. Now, part of the reason that a lot of people who will grab these items don't do it at this point is because you're going to basically have an extra trip when you get the powder. That being said, though, if you're worried about your run having a death, you're going to still save a ton of time compared to having any deaths anywhere. To answer the question in chat from Lavlor about whether the bug net's necessary, no, not strictly speaking, but if you're a fan of the swag, you might use it for Aghanim. Definitely a valid use for it. But otherwise, it's just to catch fairies. We want to use that as a safety. So this is going to insulate Nathacsa from having to, you know, repeat dungeons, having to walk back to the boss. Very run-safe strategy here. Well, we have the Lammolas fight here on JoeDamillio's screen. In an ideal world, we're going to get at least 2 arrows into each of these. Got 3 into one of them. Very nice. Excuse me. But so we have relatively good first 2 phases. He might be able to finish this off in the 3rd. Ooh, the short hop not helping him out, though. But still a very strong early 4th cycle. Very successful boss. We're getting the pendant south of 17 minutes, so he's doing very well. Probably a little bit peeved about not getting that 3 cycle, though, because he was very close to it. Just the path that Lammolas took was a little strange. Uh-oh, this might be a cactus dash, folks. Alright, he was a little further right than I thought. I've mixed up my dashes, but I was thinking the Sandman Slash as well, but neither of those strats. JoeDamillio, as you may have seen from his race earlier, tends to prefer the consistent and, you know, straightforward tactics. He's not going to risk as much, but he will hit what he does do pretty much every time. Here we have a very fun glitch called Fake Flippers. This is a minor glitch where we screen transition 1 frame after we jump into water, where there's still a window that we can move before we get kicked out of the water. Game doesn't check for flippers like it normally would, and then just lets us swim. Doing so saves us from going west of the Hyrule Castle, which takes about 6 to 8 seconds longer if you do either strat optimally. Of course, it's also a dangerous strategy because our runners could softlock the game if they take damage while in that state. Well, Joe is on his way to get his mirror and check out Tower of Hera. Only has 6 rupees, hasn't found too many drops, isn't going to have to worry about it though. The rupee route that we take will almost assuredly give us plenty. We see a really nice spin speed here on Death Mountain to avoid some of the flying cabbages and squirrels, which are residents of this area. We haven't had Gorons yet in this series, but I'm sure the dead rocks are probably an early allusion to that. You also notice that you took the right side of the portal at the top of the mountain, at the summit, just underneath Spectacle Rock. The reason why is because we can get something called a Quick Warp, where you're going to save 34 frames just by having the camera positioned in a certain specific X-coordinate pixel. Well, Joe's going to show us some swag strats with the Boomerang, Swaggerang in the basement, whereas Nathacsa is actually working on Lammolas. Oh, and we're going to see Bomb Mola strats. This is nice. Very exciting. Well, one thing that Nathacsa could do to get a little bit more damage in against these cycles is get a little bit closer to the worms. The thing is it's kind of a dangerous spot, so I mean, I can definitely understand the hesitation, but if you want to pump more arrows in, you can only have 1 on screen at a time, so it benefits you to be as close as possible. Well, JoeDamillio has finished the tile room, on his way to pick up his big key and head upstairs for a fun bomb jump, as well as a moldy worm. And Nathacsa does finish off Lammolas, look to be about 6 or 7 cycles, but not taking much damage, getting through pretty smoothly. JoeDamillio is the absolute swag master, though. He is not going to hit that switch. He is going all the way to the end of this dungeon with no worries about his health. Through the petting zoo, doesn't even take the safety heart. This man is on a mission. Well, the bomb jump was very good there. He does a dash to make sure that he can get through no matter what. There's a 2-pixel window that you can stand on to do a bomb jump there, and there's a 6-pixel window if you dash against the wall first. Moldorm here is going to take 6 slashes at the tail to be knocked down here. Now, we don't want to get knocked down because we're going to drop 1 floor if we drop to the outside, and 2 floors if we drop to the middle, would be the worst possible thing. JoeDamillio, I don't watch his health here. It's very close. Also, Nathacsa did pull off a fake flippers. That was very nicely done. Ooh, a turn right on the ledge. JoeDamillio giving me a heart attack over here, but he will finish off this fight, picking up the pendant right at 22-30, 35 almost. Mistook the pendant for the heart piece. This is a fantastic Tower of Hera split, though. I don't have his splits pulled up, but 23 minutes, very nicely done. So by the looks of it, he should be about 15 seconds or so behind his PB right now. And Nathacsa right now is about 25 seconds behind his PB. So we saw that JoeDamillio there pulled on the tree to pick up those 4 blue rupees. How this tree pull thing works, money does grow on trees in Hyrule. If you kill an enemy and pull on the tree, you're going to get 4 green rupees. If you kill 4 enemies and take damage, you'll get blue rupees. And if you kill 4 enemies after resetting that counter without taking damage, you get red rupees. So in total, as I'm sure you can count, that's going to be about 100. We need 110 to get into the Palace of Darkness, so JoeDamillio here in a pretty good spot. We're also going to get 6 free ones in the Hyrule Castle Tower, so he should have no problems having to count his rupees here. Just needs to make sure he doesn't take damage or else he'll have to do a backup strat. Well, Nathacsa heading down to the basement of Tower of Hera to get that big key. Taking probably a little bit more damage than he wants from the Kadongo there. We also get to see JoeDamillio taking advantage of a sword beam there to kill that last enemy. Only needs to kill 3 on the way in, and sword beam's making the work much easier to do this time around. So we have 106 rupees. We're going to get 6 more in the tower. We should have nothing left to worry about as far as acquiring things. Later on, we'll pick up a sword upgrade and 600 rupees from the Village of Outcasts. This will allow us to buy the flippers. But yeah, those will be the last pickups we got to really worry about here. Well, Nathacsa makes it through the tile room without taking any damage. I'm going to pick up that big key and go fight that moldy worm. JoeDamillio, though, is definitely on a good pace to get into Dark World sub 30 minutes, which is a pretty good time. Hard to say because, I mean, you know, when somebody's PB is sub 125, it's pretty fast. Seeing very nice sword beam, sword spin, and bow strats against those gold guards. You'll notice he also dashes through the blue guards in this room. This is an important thing to do for later. Prize packs are a thing. So in this game, when you kill enemies, they have certain pools that they belong to called prize packs that determine what kind of drops you can get from them. For the most part, most enemies have a 50% chance of getting their drop. Some are 100%, and I don't believe there are any 0%, but if there are, I mean, they also have their own prize pack. which would have nothing in it. But as for the 50% prize pack for those blue guards, the same kind that he just passed there, they have... The first item is going to be a 1 heart drop, and the second is a fairy. That fairy is a fantastic thing to get later on. Now, those enemies also share a prize pack with the Pokies and Mini Helmasaurs. We're going to kill 1 Mini Helmasaur in Palace of Darkness, so if we get that heart early on, that's okay. We just don't want to see that fairy. Now, the big thing about that is dashing will not increment that prize pack meter. You'll never get a drop from dashing and killing enemies. So he dashed through the enemies early on here in the tower to influence later on whether or not we get that fairy. Now, he still has a 50% chance when we get to that point, but, you know, we try to optimize this as much as we can. JoeDamillio having a little bit of trouble in the Circle of Pots room, but does get through it, no problems. Nathacsa here is about to attack Moldor. Yeah, if everything works out well with that prize pack manipulation, we'll have a fairy right before the Chomp Room in Turtle Rock some 45 minutes from now. We're getting tried and true dash strats out of Nathacsa here for the Moldorm fight. JoeDamillio is about to enter Aghanim, the fight for RNG. The RNG in this fight is kind of stupid. It's a lot of coin flips. How this will work is we have 5 attacks in each cycle. Aghanim's first attack will always be reflectable. It's our good old classic Ganon Ball volleyball. So we're going to reflect that one every time, every cycle. Attacks 2, 3, and 4 have a 50-50 chance of being a reflectable shot or a blue ball attack, which we cannot reflect. We want as few of those as possible to make this fight quick. And the 5th attack will always be a lightning attack. After that, he starts over. So the best we can do is 0. The worst we can do is 15 if we hit every guaranteed shot. JoeDamillio hasn't had any blue balls yet. Definitely a good start. Commentator Curse strikes back. So that's 1 so far in his first cycle. Another thing to note is that we want to avoid sending Aghanim towards the corners if at all possible. He's going to warp randomly after every attack. So if we knock him towards the center, he's most likely to travel the least distance. He has 3 blue balls so far. Generally speaking, the average is about 3, so this is pretty normal. Three blue balls is a pretty average performance here, so we're not too worried about that. He will enter the Dark World sub 30 minutes, doing a very good job so far in his run. Nathacsa here is about to pick up the Master Sword, so we have effectively about a 1 dungeon difference between our racers here. Great time to talk about the importance of button mashing, folks. So, in this game, I mean, you're pretty much just going to mash every button you can when you're going through most of the text, but the very last text box in any sequence can be cleared with any face button whatsoever, even D-pad or L and R. So a lot of runners will do that. They'll mash L and R as they get close to the last one to avoid accidentally dashing where they don't want to, or sword slashing where it would be waste of time to do so. Not as relevant on Joe's side, but at the Master Sword pedestal, Nathacsa did still want to do it that way. Well, Cyclone and Chad did get the guess right about JoeDamillio's blue ball count. Guessing 2 for Nathacsa, that's a ambitious, optimistic way to look at it. I'm going to guess 1, because if we're going to go that route, well, might as well hope for almost the best. This is a good time for Nathacsa to be picking up that mushroom, so we're going to get the powder. Hard to say if we're going to do that before or after Palace of Darkness, because it would be very slow to have to go grab it after. But having picked up the bug net and bottle, I don't know, that's tough to say. I mean, he has the opportunity to pick up fairies whether he gets the powder or not, so I think he probably will skip it here. He would then go and do it after the Palace of Darkness, if that's the case. Speaking of the Palace of Mirrors, So in the Palace of Mirrors, we're going to just go to one room at a time and return to the entrance over and over and over again. And this elaborate bomb farming method, because those bombs will return every single time we walk through, will give us plenty of extra tries for the next bomb jump that we're going to see, called the Hammer Jump. Ooh, and Nathacsa accidentally forgetting to switch away from Lamp is going to kind of mess up his sword spin strats here. In the meantime, JoeDamillio getting his big key, about to walk up to the bridge to do his attempt of the Hammer Jump. So just to kind of explain how this bomb jump works, because this is a bit of a doozy, this is a hard one for new runners to learn. We're going to put a bomb and Link both on Y-axis pixel perfect placements. So we need to be at a certain vertical point in the room. Now the bridge is collapsing, so we don't have a lot of time to do this. And if we do it right, we'll clip into the rail, allowing us to walk straight north and pick up the chest immediately. Now, Joe is very fast at this game, so he's going to use pause buffers while he switches his items from mirror to bomb and then back to mirror the next time to put himself in perfect position to get the bomb jump. He actually did that with no extra pause buffers. That's as clean as that gets. Well, having done a pretty much perfect bomb jump, we're going to move on to the Helmosaur King. Let's see if JoeDamillio gives us a sexy statue today. But the real question is, can a statue roll deep? And apparently not. That Mimic room looked really nice, though. Oh, good lord. But he loses his sword beams going into the basement, so he's going to have to do an extra menu here. Not a big deal. The thing that does stink about that, though, is he will have one less hit available to him when he's fighting the Helmosaur King, who does 2 hearts of damage with every type of attack. So that's going to be a little bit of a tighter fight. Hopefully Joe has good RNG and doesn't get a lot of fireballs. Making really nice use of the boomerang, though. Nathacsa here actually taking some interesting strats for the Circle of Pots room, going around to make sure that we didn't get hit. And we'll also have the turtle room out of JoeDamillio here. This is a very dangerous place, but using a very good spin slash after the 2 hammer hits, able to get by with no damage. Well, so we're going to have to hit this mask 17 times with the hammer. Joe was trying to do the no sword out strats, and I think he's still trying to do it, to get a little bit more maneuverability while he hits this boss in the face with that hammer. He is down to 2 hearts, but he does despawn the fireball. He's got to be really close here, or really careful here. Interestingly enough, by being far enough to the left, that fireball despawned when he hit the wall. And Joe, with just 2 hearts left and 4 really, really well-timed and well-spaced out hammer hits, does pull off the Helmosaur King fight. That was a very tense moment. Well, I haven't had a chance with that crazy fight to keep track of the blue balls on Nathacsa's side, although that looks to be the first cycle so far. Now, we know that Joe did enter the Dark World right around 29:30. So right now we're looking at about a 7-minute or so difference between our 2 runners, presuming, of course, that we don't have any major mishaps through the end of this fight. So that may have been one, may have been two blue balls. Definitely a good fight. Greenham and Chad also pointing out that, you know, if you have too many blue ball attacks, 4 for example, or more, you're going to get an extra phase of the lightning attack. So it's very important that you have, you know, less, particularly within those increments, to prevent having to spend a bunch of time waiting. Got a really nice hammer dash out of JoeDamillio there. So how that works is when you use an item and dash on the same frame, the game in 1.0 version will allow you to do both at the same time. We call it an item dash uncreatively. It has varying effects depending on the item. It actually makes the item active for the entire dash. So if you do it with a bow, you're going to charge up the bow throughout the dash, and then when you stop, it'll shoot the bow. Same thing with a couple of other items like the Cane of Samaria, which will activate the block instantly, but you'll be in like the using animation while you run. There's a couple of really important ones. If we use a item dash, we activate that spin speed we talked about before. Something called super speed in that particular scenario. And we can do that with a hook shot to do something called the hook dash, which will activate spin speed much faster than, say, doing it with like a sword spin. Now, I mean, everybody in chat here, you know, does understand, of course, that the most important item dash in the game is the shovel dash, even if it's not, you know, unfortunately going to actually dig up for an item on every square. Interesting thing about JoeDamillio here on the left, he's going to activate the flute from the left side, probably setting up for a little spin speed right after this. But doing this on the left side allows you to get closer to the portal on the left. If you was going to get powder or something like that, you would just activate it from the south as soon as you are in range. That spin speed doesn't save a ton of time, only a handful of frames, but it looks really sweet. Well, we have the swan song, but we're not going to use that flute for anything really for a little while. Ooh, and JoeDamillio getting another really nice quick warp on the left side of that portal. Nathacsa here is in Palace of Darkness, going to pick up that big key. Hasn't lost any hearts yet, so we'll also have a chance to see another bomb jump. I think in the last race I saw, though, we ended up going to the basement. Remains to be seen if Nathacsa goes after that, because that's a really difficult bomb jump. All the while on the left, JoeDamillio is entering Thieves Town. I can hear everybody not asking in chat, well, hey, why are we going to this dungeon? That's not the second dungeon. Well, it is if you're doing the speed run for some very important reasons. Shout out to Blunt's Bunny on JoeDamillio's screen. We're going to get the Titan's Mitts from this dungeon, which allows us to get a sword upgrade very early. By doing that, we're going to have a much easier time through several of the dungeons that are coming up. Most importantly, well, Skull Woods and Misery Mire and Ice Palace, those 3 dungeons really benefit from us having access to this early. Looks like Nathacsa is going after the bomb jump bufferless, but coming a little bit south of the bomb on the adjustment. That's really hard to do bufferless, but a lot of people actually find it easier to learn it that way because pause buffers are a little awkward to do. But Nathacsa running low on bombs is going to opt to go to the back half instead. It's definitely something that I agree with. If you mess it up more than once or twice, you don't want to spend all your hearts, continuing to try it. So good heads-up decision here. I'm just going to grab the small key from back here. JoeDamillio taking a slight hug there, but he has a scripted fight coming up, so doesn't have to worry too much about his health. Just needs to make sure he doesn't die before he gets the maiden to where she needs to be. Well, JoeDamillio had no major issues getting through the Hellway. That's an important conveyor belt room. I kind of missed it talking about that bomb jump. We're going to move on to the basement and pick up those gloves. Those gloves being the things that we love the most. Meanwhile, Nathacsa showing us the rest of the dark maze that we don't typically see in the fastest runs, but is definitely something worth knowing the route for in case you have this situation happen to you. Happy to see that we went this route, though, instead of dying several times trying it. Ooh, a really nice conveyor room dash from JoeDamillio there. Standing right in the center pixel and actually not getting hit by any electric jellies, which is nice. Very easy to mess that room up. So Joe will walk into this fight with only a heart and a half missing, so he just needs to have a good blind fight, which if you do it correctly the same every time, will always go exactly the same way. It's only when things go a little bit off script, when we have delayed a little bit too much to hit one of the heads, for example, where the patterns change. So every fourth shot will track Link's position from these heads. Have to keep in mind that. We want to just hit the head as soon as we're able to. And then if it weren't for a slight mishap with that sword spin, JoeDamillio would have had a perfect fight, but otherwise, very nicely done. Maybe a couple seconds difference from the optimal. Anytime you don't have to repeat that fight is a victory, though, so JoeDamillio will make his way to Skull Woods next, but first we need to pick up some rupees, a frog, some more rupees, and, yeah, we'll jump in there and grab the fire rod. Well, the gap is starting to widen. Nathacsa here is about to head into the basement of Palace of Darkness. I'm not sure if he has a fairy in his inventory, which would be very helpful for this fight. He is not going to have an opportunity to pick up another one. Yes, he does have one. Okay, good. Having lost a little bit of health, he already has to menu again. So with the Turtle Room coming up, and then, of course, Home Store King, would have been in a very rough spot to only have 5 hearts left. There's the first 300 rupees. We're going to go say hi to Jeremiah the Frog in a moment. Ooh, Nathacsa getting trolled a bit by the hammer radius of impacts for those turtles. They tend to flip themselves right back up, or back upside down and on their feet in alternating patterns if you get a little desynced. Well, moment of truth for Nathacsa here. This is one of the most challenging fights of the run based on the safety route he's taking. Ooh, just a little bit too slow to get the despawn for the fireball, but no big deal. Hasn't had a fireball after that. Gonna opt for sword slashes, which you only need 8 of to finish him off. So with that, Helmasaur King goes down. No damage for Nathacsa. So very good fight. Thalfon in chat asking about Tempered being a time save. Absolutely. If nothing else, literally just for the Argus fight, where we can do 1 slash per puff compared to everything else. But Cold Stare's made significantly faster. You could do Sword Beam strats on it, but ooh, no fence dash for JoeDamillio today. Chat might be a little disappointed on that one. Personally, I never get it, so I'm not disappointed, but chat may have different opinions, particularly a couple people in it. Yeah, so Tempered's a big time save. Trying to do Master Sword Ganon is a absolute pain in the neck, and you would only be able to get silvers if you wanted to, do a silver Ganon, but not with Tempered, or never having picked up Tempered. So you would have lost any time save you would have had having to go to the pyramid anyway. Now, as far as Gold Sword goes, going to the pyramid is really the only time lost with that. Of course, you do save some time on certain enemies, Doesn't necessarily have to be significant though. Ooh, JoeDamillio opting to kill one of these Gibdos because he was just standing right in the way. Oh, and he's gonna get grabbed. Ouch. So the hand of God coming down to pick JoeDamillio up. Decided he was rolling a little too deep in a no deep rolling zone. And is going to penalize him in this play. That's unfortunate. Joe also needed to be mindful of his health here. He has exactly half a heart. He may opt to just take the hug. Yeah, he's going to take the death ward because it's much better to, not have to worry about dying in the next room right before you pick up that key. Well, take two here. We have the big keys, so it's time to go get ourselves a fire rod. Nathacsa here on the right side is going to pick up his flute, but he needs a shovel to do that first, and he's going to bend time and space to make sure the Pinocchio over here hears this song one last time. Saw a really nice bomb jump out of JoeDamillio there. Just like Tower of Hera, if you dash into that wall, you can get a little bit more leeway. But so that saves a fair amount of time because otherwise you would have to drop into the hole in the middle of those bushes on the right and then bomb a hole and pull a switch and wait for a long animation. So pretty hefty time save there. Very nice. Skull Woods here, though, we're almost going to miss it if we blink. We're going to grab a key here and head to the back half. We have a moth to kill. And that moth is drawn to the flames, so that fire rod's going to come in handy. Having some trouble with the fire bar RNG. Couldn't get the key dash, not a big deal, but he only has 3 hearts left, so this is a pretty dangerous part of the game right now for Joe. Who has been doing very well in this run, but is really struggling with Skull Woods right now. Now, the biggest way this limits him is he's going to have to be very mindful of the spikes in the Mothula fight. He has a little bit less leeway to do some damage boost strats. He can't really afford a hug at this juncture. Does a poke dash very effectively. And wow, that is as good as you can hope for in the Mothula fight. He had favorable RNG. He did the poke dash to start it off. That's A+. I mean, I don't even know how much faster that can be. And the answer, if there is one, is like a 2-digit number of frames tops. Well, in the meantime, Nathacsa has Thieves Town to go attack. We have the mushroom now, and I believe he picked up powder while we're watching the various adventures Joe had in Skull Woods. Yep, we did pick up the powder, so Nathacsa in a great position to get through Thieves Town without a death. Might end up with a fairy revival if blind goes bad or if the Hellwave proves to be difficult. But that's exactly why we pick up the powder at this point. Well, so this is a great opportunity to route a couple of things in together. We have to have those flippers in order to get into 2 of the dungeons, unless we want a fake flipper to Ice Palace, which is kind of rare. But we also need to get the Quake Medallion for Turtle Rock, so let's go visit a catfish and get both. Also, chat pointing out a very nice technique we use in the speedrun, menuing when you want to change your direction. Menu pause bufferings for just to change an item or to change direction. You can combine the two together, and if you're doing so very well, over the course of a run, you're not going to have a lot of dropped or messed up inputs. Well, in the meantime, Nathacsa is heading to the basement of Thieves Town. With that and the powder, should have no problems progressing through here. We'll have a couple of opportunities to heal, particularly right here with this anti-fairy. Probably going to opt for the bunny beam in the basement, though. And JoeDamillio, having picked up the flippers from our extortionist friend, the Zora King, and the Quake Medallion from the Catfish, who just wants us to get the heck out of there. We're going to head through that whirlpool straight down to Lake Hylia for Ice Palace. In the meantime, Nathacsa here picking up the Maiden, who we know is blind. So Ice Palace here is a very fun and very intimidating and very scary dungeon in a lot of different ways. I imagine JoeDamillio here is pretty familiar and pretty comfortable with everything that he does in this dungeon, but this is a place where a lot of runs die. A lot of runs come here to die because Cold Stare is a very punishing place to die. We need full magic in order to fight this boss, and if you do have the misfortune to die, you're going to basically put yourself in a position where you have to farm for magic just to get back in. Well, we have this fun conveyor belt room, and I say fun because we tend to lose a lot of health in here. JoeDamillio does take 1 heart damage. However, Nathacsa here has the blind fight with 2 hearts left, 1 actually now at this point. Has to be mindful of where these fire balls are heading. You can take 1 damage from a fireball and 2 from a hug here, so that's going to be enough to knock the Nathacsa down. Thankfully, she does have a fairy, so she'd have no issues continuing the fight if we can get this last cycle done. Got to be really careful here because getting back up to the top to get those 2 swipes in is going to be kind of difficult. Ooh, 2 hearts left. Just... oh, no. So that's a punishing death to take because Blind will now spawn at the top of the room when she walks in there. So without sword beams, which may end up trying to get, that's going to be very hard to do the first phase, which was free before. In the meantime, JoeDamillio here is going to approach the Cold Stare fight. Has 6 hearts to work with, so can only take 1 hug from Cold Stare. Ooh, nice hammer dash to get to the block there. Very nicely done. That was really sick looking. But can only take 1 hug from the boss and potentially up to 3 ice collisions from the floor here. We get a nice little sword spin, a poke dash, and a couple of slashes to the top, even mirroring in confidence. That is nicely done. Nathacsa here, ouch, taking a fall. I don't believe picked up any kind of fairy, so in this situation it makes a lot of sense to go grab some fairies. If you're already looking at, kind of a rough death, if you had it with fairies, you kind of want to just play your odds here and just, take the slight time loss to not take several deaths. Well, the refight's going okay. Taking a hug there, though, that's going to be dangerous. We do have 2 of the phases done, but with 1 heart left, this is a really tough place to be. So, yeah, that's going to be another fall. Well, we are pressing a little further into the dungeon. Interesting story there with JoeDamillio taking a flute and they jump off the ledge to get to the bird just a little bit faster. Very small optimization, but it looks nice. We'll also get another quick warp out of him on the left. So by the looks of it, Nathacsa, she's going to keep going after this relentlessly. And then with that, we'll take another death to blind. Well, I gotta admire the heart that Nathacsa has here. That's a rough place to be, and to continue going after it even after 3 deaths really speaks to the endurance that this runner has. Something that is underrated in the speedrunning community, if you've never run a speed game yourself, it takes a lot of patience and a lot of mental fortitude. The place that you see Joe at right now, as far as his time is, comes from a lot of, difficult runs and a lot of, doing the wrong thing a million times until you do it right every time. Although, honestly, I think he's probably a little bit better of a runner than that. He has a reputation, after all. So Scrivo answering a question that I hadn't already vocalized, but it was definitely in my mind. Where can we get a fairy drop or a bunny beam? And the northwest of the first room is a good place to, as an example. Nathacsa almost getting the kill without even bothering with that. But I have to think at this point, having taken a few deaths, kind of gotta, reel it back a second, think here, what are we gonna do to have a little more health? Because 3 hearts definitely ain't gonna do it this time. Of course, Nathacsa could prove me wrong, and then I would look really stupid, which would be pretty cool, but we wish the best for Nathacsa here, because 1 heart of health to work with. 1-hit KO mode, basically. Well, in the meantime, JoeDamillio here in Swamp Palace is getting all the way to the far left of the dungeon, sub 1 hour, is currently on a very great pace. A small part of me is wondering what kind of capture setup that JoeDamillio has here, because the colors look very defined here in Swamp Palace. I'm noticing like some borders that I don't normally see. So it looks like, based on what I'm seeing here, I believe that Nathacsa has actually forfeited the race. I feel really rough for Nathacsa because this is just, really terrible position to be in. When you get to that point with blind, it's really tough to kind of recover from that. That positioning is really hard to adjust to. Well, folks, I want to just kind of throw the sentiment out there. I'm sure most of you would echo it as well. We greatly appreciate that Nathacsa would make the attempt on this run, putting on a good show for us. Having some rough luck with blind, but we've all been there. We know that feeling. So you're definitely not alone in experiencing that. I mean, everybody's right there with you. In the meantime, though, we did see a really nice hook dash shot of JoeDamillio there on the left side to grab that statue and the pot underneath it in 1 try. The super speed state from a hook dash actually does make it so that you can reach pretty much through objects at that point. Well, with that, folks, this then becomes a commentated RTA run by JoeDamillio, so we'll look to see if I can keep up with it, because he is a very fast runner. This man is on a tear as far as I'm concerned. Maybe not the time that would impress him the most, but we are excited to see this run. Well, from what I can tell, I'm getting a very good sword slash tactic here to do a one cycle on Argus. You can also do a hook dash at the beginning of the fight to get a zero cycle, but that's a very hard, very not stable for race strategy. One of the hardest things you can do in this game, actually. So with the one cycle very cleanly done, JoeDamillio will finish up Argus. Well, everything's looking pretty good so far for this run. I'm looking at the splits on JoeDamillio's screen on his actual stream. Seeing a lot of stuff already filled out. I'm not exactly sure what the format of them is, but he appears to be, I believe, about 2 minutes behind his PB, maybe a little bit further. This is also one of the longest cutscenes in the game, so button mashing never more important than here. Alright, so we have the hook shot, we have Swamp Palace done. Next up is a series of much more difficult dungeons. This was kind of like our brief break. Ooh, a really nice flute dash to go catch the bird early. That was really sick. But next up, JoeDamillio is going to do his shopping trip. This is basically the one break we have in between dungeons. Right now, we need the Ether Medallion to get into Misery Mire, and he may also opt to pick up his Ice Rod at this point. Otherwise, he would do it after this dungeon. No big time difference between doing those, though. Between doing those two routes, though. N0 Kanata in chat asking about what happened with Nathacsa. Nathacsa decided to forfeit the race after a string of really difficult blind deaths. Blind being a boss that does tend to kill a lot of runs. I had the right idea with picking up some safeties going into it, but without, kind of knowing where we would pick up the fairies next, just kind of looked hopeless on Nathacsa's side. I have to think that's probably why they forfeited. But still a great run to watch, though. I mean, I really appreciate that they would put on the race for us at all. And, Nathacsa having just some rough luck. Well, folks, some of you out there may like the meme. The memes in general, of course. With Link to the Past, NMG, we have one favorite one, or at least in my opinion. Walrus Prime originated it. That's right, it's the bird toss. We use Ether here to open up Misery Mire, and this bird just kind of lies right in front of us. If we have a love for the funny things in life, we'll throw it into the pond on the left, but JoeDamillio may do something different here. Instead, he is going to carry in the bird with him into Misery Mire, possibly as a good luck charm. He may end up needing it for Misery Mire 2, or the next room, which is a very, very fast room if you do it right. Take a look here and see how Joe handles it. Okay, that was sick. And if it weren't for that Popo moving south, that would have been a perfect room. Well, so this is where the run starts to get a lot more difficult. Although there have been some pretty rough difficulty spikes so far, I was happy to see both of our runners make it through Helmasaur King without a death. Very nice to see. Joe's going to make sure he gets that key and hits that switch on his way through. Now, torch rooms that we're about to come up to on the next room going upstairs are, generally speaking, about 20 minutes or so, maybe 21 minutes, depending on the run, from the end for most runners. So right now, JoeDamillio is on a very good pace, roughly 127, 128 if all things go right. That being said, the sub 130 here is what's really impressive. To do so in a race setting is really difficult. A lot of people struggle to get even that time doing RTA runs just on their own streams. So JoeDamillio here has only taken 1 heart of damage here in Misery Mire. Well, actually took a 2nd heart of damage earlier, but did get a good heart drop. This is important for a couple of reasons. There are fast ways to kill this boss, and they require us to take damage. So JoeDamillio here, not having the powder, will have to be very careful throughout the rest of this dungeon to avoid any excessive damage. There is another damage boost we'll do in the room after this, well, 2 rooms after this, to get a key, and we should be taking at least 3 hearts of damage in that room. That was almost perfectly executed. The Stalfos, with the red Stalfos that bumped into him at the end, was the only thing that went wrong there. Moving on to the Misery Mire basement, we're going to go a little bit deeper into the dungeon, rolling our way through here, placing a switch down, moving through the door. One thing you'll notice about JoeDamillio's movement is that he uses dashes very efficiently. One thing that'll slow down runners of the higher, skill levels is if they have to adjust which direction they're moving, they'll end a dash early, and charging up the dash takes a lot of time. So JoeDamillio has been solid all race long about that. So we have really good health here walking into the boss of Misery Mire, Vitreous. If we do this optimally, we need to take at least 4 hearts of damage to do some sword spins in the goop that surrounds the eyes. That being said, though, as long as we have, say, 6, we're feeling pretty good about where we are with health. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to dive into the goop to take damage to get invincibility frames. We're going to do some really nice sword spins here. And drop an arrow with half a heart. JoeDamillio sitting on the edge of the damage zone of the fight, and holy smokes, what a close fight. And he does get the 0 cycle, by the way, which is sick. Well, I don't know how JoeDamillio feels about that fight. I feel incredible. It was a privilege to watch that. It was closer than I could hope for any runner, and I'm just happy to see that it didn't result in a death. But that's not the entire run, folks. We still have 2 more dungeons to go. Next up is Turtle Rock, and I believe he already got his ice rod. I don't remember, actually. But if he didn't, this would be the time he would. Very small time save there. He's heading up to the mountain, so he does already have his ice rod. We're going to take on the 3-headed dog that is Cerberus, the Hellhound, or as we actually call him, ooh, nice sword climb, the Trinex. Now, Turtle Rock, we have manipulated a prize pack for this entire race, trying to get a fairy drop right before the Chain Chomp room. We're going to find out pretty soon as he gets into the dungeon, whether or not that's going to be a reality. If not, then he's going to have to be very mindful of his health, probably opting to mirror if he takes too much damage in the roller room. Though he is very good at this game, he might just damage boost through it anyway. Doing okay with the dead rocks there, only getting trolled by one of them and not even blocking his path. We get some really nice hammer pegs here. And of course, we get to see if JoeDamillio does the fabled medallion dash. If you do an item dash with the medallion, the steps leading up to that platform there actually are a staircase that allows you to arm the glitch. Usually you won't get the super speed from it, but you will drop off the ledge with a quick hop immediately, which is a really nice feature of super speed. Saves about 10 to 15 frames in that scenario. I mean, compared to a quick hop, however long it would normally take you. Got a couple of quick torch rooms here. So this is a nice one. Ooh, he missed it. So he'll just have to get it on the way back around. But one thing that you'll see a lot of runners do is they'll grab the torch on the right after they light it. It's actually better to grab any of the torches on the left because the camera doesn't have to pan as far to respawn Link. And we're going to take some damage just to boost through the second one. Now we've only lost 5 hearts. These chain chomps do 4 each, so he can afford to take 1 hit if he doesn't get the fairy drop here, and if he doesn't, then he can get a fairy drop later in the dungeon where it might be more useful to him. This pokey here is where we'll find out. Ooh, and that was a heart, so he's never even incremented the prize pack, so that was the first prize pack in the set. He now can get a drop from any of the pokies left in this dungeon, although it's only a 50-50 chance still. Now, using some really nice iframes from the pegs, he manages to get through those chain chomps. So those chain chomps, sometimes you just kind of gotta dodge. You just gotta know what the RNG is doing and, you know, kind of manipulate them to move away from where that push block is. You can do it on both sides of the room, so if you get bad RNG, you just gotta react. But that was, that was really close. Remember, he does not have powder at his disposal, so getting fairies, even though there are anti-fairies everywhere in this dungeon, is actually like, really tough. You could do it in a safety room after the laser bridge, but nobody really goes there because, you know, at that point you either have powder or you're not going to take the safety anyway. Yes, Thalfon, the key pokey can have a fairy drop as well. So at this point, it's just 50-50 odds that the next pokey will have it, or any pokey thereof. It's not going to increment to a different item than the fairy, so, you know, it remains to be seen. He still has 3 other pokies he could get it from. Probably only going to kill 2 of them, though. Speaking of those pokies, here we go. And there's the fairy drop. Very nice find. Now, prize packs become absolutely irrelevant to our runners. They might hope for some nice, you know, arrow drops, and he may actually know what that prize pack is. I don't personally. But so, at this point, he's just going to try to do as much as he can to preserve his health. 1 for the, you know, laser bridge skip, which can take a lot of health, 4 hearts per laser you get hit by. 2 for some of the damage that he can take here from the fire bars. And 3, of course, from any extraneous enemies going through the block puzzle right before Trinex. He's probably not going to take much damage from Trinex himself, though. Chad also pointing out that we did get a full magic, which is nice. He doesn't need it that badly, though, because we'll get another one right before Trinex. However, it's just nice to have the safety of knowing, hey, you got full magic, don't gotta sweat it at all. The best possible benefit of having more magic is, you know, the boss refill. But we're going to use most of our magic anyway, so it's not a big difference in time either way. Ooh, getting denied a little bit by that pokey. Also a very weird Samaria beam. This is going to be a frustrating situation for Joe right now. So Chad also talking about doing a key dash without, or the door dash without using the wall. Link dashes at 4 pixels per frame, so I mean, if you line up, you have a 25% chance of guessing it right either way. Well, very nice one-cycle Trinex for the first phase, and getting a nice sword spin to finish this off about as quick as that could have been. Maybe a couple frames sooner, but I mean, JoeDamillio here with fantastic execution all the way through. Well, that's Trinex, folks, so you know what time it is. It's time for us to go find that pig. Ganon's Tower has a lot of rooms for us to potentially go into, but we're only going to touch a small handful of the basement's rooms, and then we're just going to make a mad dash up to the top to fight Aghanim in another refight. Of course, he is not the first refight we will encounter. It is basically a mini light world in this dungeon. So we're going to fight Armos, we're going to fight Lamolus, we're going to fight Moldorm. Although, I mean, if he knows how to hover, he may just skip the Moldorm fight entirely. Although I'm truthfully not familiar enough to know whether or not JoeDamillio does that. Yeah, in chat, we're talking about lining up with the grid. That's an important thing to remember. Most objects in pretty much every room are going to be in a coordinate grid that lines up with 4 pixels. So that's why if you nudge against something and run past it, you're always going to be lined up for your dash to go through a door with basically like a perfect key dash. Alrighty, I'm not sure, I might have blanked out for a second there on my end, but it looks like, yep, so Joe went to the basement. I didn't see whether or not he picked up the torch key, but judging by his key count, he did. So doing so allows him to avoid having to pick one up in the mini Helmasaur room, closer to the top of this dungeon. We're going to see a nice use of the boomerang against the wall to get that switch. He's also going to use a boomerang and then a hook shot to never have to worry about, say, switching your item. It actually saves time to do that item switch. We're going to make use of that hookshot in this room as well. And from here on out, just a couple of warp tiles to go through, as well as another bonk damage, or a bonk skip. We're going to bonk against one of the walls in the next room to skip over an extra warp tile. Very nicely done by Joe. Next up, though, we're going to have, well, a couple of anti-fairies in a room. One of them has a name in a different portion of our community. Bob, of course. That's not relevant in NMG, though, because that glitch doesn't happen in NMG. Or at least in the vanilla game. But we will fight some Ice Armos, and we have 25 arrows to work with, so JoeDamillio in a really good position here. He's going to have 7 after this fight. Because he needs 8 to kill the mimics, he's also going to pick up a chest in the room behind this room. You'll see that he's also shooting the one on the left. This fast kill is a little different than the one in Eastern Palace because of the ice. You'll also notice that they didn't start circling the room until they all reached their resting position, so that's why we aim left there to delay that. Ooh, with a swag chest turn. JoeDamillio putting on a show for us. Now, there is a very brief window where you can actually turn after opening up a chest. There's absolutely no real benefit, as far as I know, from doing so, unless you count the direction you're facing. Maybe you could block an arrow if you're really good at it. But it looks sweet. It looks really cool. Swag for the sake of swag. Joe's going to take a safer strat through this spike room, but didn't get the timing to dash right back through. Not a problem. Having lost a little bit of health, it'd be interesting to see if he's going to take the safety fairies that are in this section here. Ooh, the sick Ganon Ball Z dash. Very nicely done. So we did not take the backup safety fairies, and we have 4.5 hearts to work with here in the gauntlet, so JoeDamillio has to be kind of careful. I'm wondering if he's going to try to get more aggressive to try to clear these rooms without taking damage before, say, these BMOS statues can actually shoot at him. Ooh, bumping in that horse head's really costly. He's got 2.5 hearts to work with here, and he's not going to get a full health refill for the entire dungeon. Well, we were very close to getting a 1 cycle out of that, but with a sword spin, JoeDamillio is going to get an early 2 cycle. Not a problem at all. Definitely a fast fight overall. Does not care about that magic pot. Cares a lot more about getting that that health. Because we're going to use that magic that we get the refill from in Moldorm to do the Ganon fight. So we're not really sweating too much on that level. Of course, we're also going to get one in the Torches room. At this point, though, JoeDamillio does have enough magic to do the lamp strats and then a fire rod across the gap. We'll probably not be picking up... Oh, we'll have to pick up magic, actually, in order to do the Torches 2 room. So he will pick up the full magic refill in the next room. Now, he could potentially skip the... Ooh, really close to getting that one torch in the top right corner. Not a problem, though. The backup's very safe. But he could potentially skip picking up the next magic if he hadn't missed that one fire rod. So he probably will actually do that here. Looks like Joe is not too concerned about the craziness that is hovering. He's going to opt to just do a very fast kill of Moldorm 2 instead. Again, I have no idea if he even knows how to hover. It's kind of an obscure, very difficult movement tech. But that's about as good as a Moldorm 2 fight can get. He's going to take a very nice, interesting bonk off of the spike to get around that mini Helmasaur. Never even realized you could do that, but very effectively done. That's 1 heart of damage traded for a very safe conveyor belt room. Well, Aghanim 2 here is a very straightforward fight. We have the original fight from before, plus 2 after images that only shoot the reflective shots. Now, Joe had what looked like a triple there, although it may have missed, because if 2 of those balls hit at the same frame, it's only going to count 1 of them. Ooh, the point-blank reflection. So we're going to get a 4th cycle out of him here, due to some bad luck with patterns. Ooh, and another shot got eaten up again. Wow. Well, Joe probably a little frustrated with that one. With a really good Ganon fight, though, it's potential 128 territory. I'm not sure if it's going to be 127 range right now, though. That would be a 1.5 minute Ganon. Yeah, so he's probably in the 128 territory right now. Well, Ganon here takes 12 slashes per cycle in order to advance the next cycle. We're using some really clever spin slashes between him and the Trident. We can get some extra hits in here. And we'll just slash him to death now that he's in the corner. With that, we're going to grab a torch for safety. Have to watch ourselves in that pattern. Didn't really want those concentric circles of fire bats to spawn, but we can get to the other side no problems. So JoeDamillio getting a really great 1-in-1 cycle. And we gotta watch out for those warps, but only gets 1 warp so far in phase 3. That's really good. I spoke too soon. Well, 4 warps could be a lot worse than that, so I mean that's definitely not unwelcome to see. Really got to watch himself with these fire bats. Is going to get the torch glitch just barely. That fire rod torch glitch is always very nice to see. If you light the left one before the right one goes out, the right one will never go out. So at this point, all he needs to do is get 12 sword spins. I believe he got the free one at the beginning of the first cycle here. So he should need, I believe, 8 or 9 more. In an ideal world, he needs 6 more, but I don't know if he missed an extra one. Now, we use the fire rod because that allows us to charge up our sword, giving us enough time to get an early hit there, allowing us to get 3 per cycle. So Joe's been doing really well with that. He even has magic to spare. I think he only needs 1 more hit. And with that, JoeDamillio is going to finish this race, and he is going to finish the fanfare in under 128. Fantastic race time. We're going to see if we can get him in for an interview. I was very impressed by that race. Well, we do have JoeDamillio in the chat saying that he's got a lot of noise in the background, so no worries there. But, you know, GG, fantastic race. I know you don't feel that great about it. You're saying yikes, but I'm pretty sure most of us out there who don't have the 128 in our repertoire whatsoever are audibly pog-champing watching this. So, I mean, fantastic to see. A lot of things to learn from as well. One thing I think that, you know, JoeDamillio does here that a lot of people can learn from is go for the consistency. Clearly, some of the strats are not going to be the riskiest and most rewarding in time save, but you can get a 128 not trying the stuff that, you know, can end your run or put you in a position where you fall behind from, you know, gambles. So, JoeDamillio, I want to thank you for, you know, putting on this race for us, for, you know, showing us all these fantastic strategies. It was a pleasure to commentate, and I appreciate your kind words in chat. With that, we're going to have the credits crawl here, so I just want to highlight to everybody in chat, you know, what's going on here with speed gaming. First and foremost, if you want to catch all of this tournament, you should follow all of the speed gaming channels so that we can catch all of our restreams. Speed gaming 1 through 6, potentially even having some races on that channel. Of course, if you loved the performance that you saw today, if you thought this was a really entertaining race like I did, you should follow the runners. And they are obviously both playing A Link to the Past plenty. Lots to watch with both of these runners. And of course, as we talked about earlier in the delayed intro, they also run a lot of other games too. So if you, you know, like to see more speed runs, these are obviously very talented people. I'm looking up the schedule right now for the rest of speed gaming. That should be an idea of what's coming up next, because we are on Speed Gaming 4 right now. So next up here on Speed Gaming 4 tonight, it looks like we're going to have a Shantae race coming up in a little bit. Elsewhere on the Speed Gaming networks, Speed Gaming 2 has a randomizer race that has just started in the last half an hour. Speed Gaming 5 has one ongoing. We're going to have a Rockman 2 race going on right now as well. And you can also find more randomizer throughout the night, and even Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland on Speed Gaming 1. So with that, I think I'm going to wrap things up with us, you know, so that we can move on to the next programming. I want to thank everybody for tuning into this race. My name is JoeDamillio. I want to thank JoeDamillio and Nathacsa for running. Both of them did a great job. Thank you, Feasel, for putting all this on for us and doing all the technical stuff in the back end. And with that, I am going to say farewell. Thanks again, folks. I'm JoeDamillio, and see you next mission.